what you eat and how you move is not the center of your life. You do it so that you can center other things in your life. And you don't have to be a victim in your own health. You can really put yourself in the driver's seat in a lot of ways. Live the life that you deserve to live. You can nurture yourself, and you can do it in a way that isn't restrictive. That there is a place where the healthy building blocks of a meal meets up with the mental satiation of just like understanding what food plays and the purpose that it plays in your life, and finding that really good balance between the two.
All right, little interruption before we get into the podcast. Did you know that over 60% of you that listen to this show regularly aren't subscribed to the channel? So if you could do me a favor and click on the subscribe button, because it really helps the channel grow and really helps me get bigger guests on the show and helps me elevate the quality of the show. So again, I run these episodes ad-free for that reason, because I want to give you the best experience possible without any interruption. So this is my little interruption right here. So if you could do me a favor and subscribe, click on the notification bell so you can be notified when the episode goes live. I appreciate it very much. Enjoy the episode. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, we're joined with a very special guest, our newest addition to the Fit Vegan coaching family, Cassidy Barash. Did I say it properly?
Yeah, pretty good. Not bad.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for our Fit Vegan family to get to know you and to know that you're going to be able to, participate in our mission of serving people. And this episode is going to serve for people to get to know you, like who you are, what's your story, why you went vegan, what made you want to be a coach. And so let's dive into the beginning. Let's go to the most important question. What made you go vegan?
So it's not a very traditional story, and I've already told Ivy it, and she was even like, okay. So basically, I was 15. I had just finished watching Planet of the Apes, not even the original, the remake with James Franco, and saw them, doing their experiments on the monkeys, and I just like spiraled out of control. I was like, that can't be a thing. And then it was a thing. And then you just end up in YouTube black hole. And being a very impulsive 15-year-old girl, I decided to go vegan overnight. Nobody knew what it was. My parents didn't know what it was. And it was just one of those things of like, whatever she wants to do, just let her do it. And I went cold turkey overnight with no education on it. And just very little knowledge of even how to eat myself. But I was very determined to stick with it, and I haven't stopped since, and now I'm 30, so it's been 15 years of sticking to it thanks to Planet of the Apes.
That's amazing. I do remember Ivy telling me that, and I was like, I thought I had an unconventional story. You definitely have an unconventional one as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, you live in BC, mm-hmm. in, around Vancouver area, which is where all of our Fit Vegan coaches are from.
Crazy.
There's something about the BC area and great coaches.
So weird.
Do you feel that your parents were more understanding of you going vegan, considering you were raised in BC? It's like a West Side thing, right?
Yeah.
Compared to like a East Coast.
It definitely is. There's definitely a wellness vibe here that people are pretty, like almost born with. I would say that my mom had no idea what it was. So she was just like, you tell me what I'm supposed to be buying and cooking, and we'll just figure it out. She was like, whatever you want, we'll just try it. She ended up trying it with me, and she ended up loving it. She's like, basically, I would say like she's 90% anyways. So I grew up also a very picky eater. I was kind of like big joke that I was born vegan because all I really ate was noodles and rice for a majority of my life. And so it wasn't like the biggest transition to go vegan, but it was more so the little things of like what you realize is like your whole life you think is vegan and it's just not. So it was taking out all that stuff and figuring it out. But my mom was very, very supportive. She's all about that, the health stuff and wanting to learn more about nutrition. The other side of the family, the heavily Croatian, Eastern European, very meat heavy centric diet, not so much. It's still convincing my grandma that fish is not vegan is still a daily battle, but she's getting closer every single day. 15 years later, she's almost there. Took a while, but everyone's coming around. Everyone pretty much is on board at this point, and they understand. So, and I'm also the weirdo that brings my own food to the function, and I have been for many years, and that's never been an issue with me.
Yeah, I think most people listening to the podcast are those people.
Yeah, you
When
kind
you
of
bring
have
your own
to.
food, when you go to you get to a family event, yeah, family events are always interesting, right? Like you're
Hmm.
vegan, so you can't have steak or chicken, but you can have eggs and you can have cheese and yogurt.
Yeah,
And yeah,
or just a little
I'm
bit.
happy.
Yeah, it won't hurt.
Yeah, just yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No one will know.
yeah.
It's like no, I
Like,
will
well,
know
I'll
that I
know.
ate that.
Yeah, my body
Yeah.
will know. It'll feel it.
So what was it for you that kind of, besides watching Planet of the Apes, what was the other moment where you're like, obviously I would assume it was the animal cruelty aspect that kind of got you to turn over.
Yeah.
What was the second point that really locked you in? Was it the environment? Was it the health aspect?
For me, it was probably health. I have been dealing with health issues since I was little. And when I went vegan, and this is like a whole other topic on its own, but there definitely is a lot of miseducation around being vegan. And I was one of those people that, like, I was very dead set on cutting everything out, but like I was still missing a lot of education around how to actually like nourish myself. But
Yeah.
even with all of that, and even with probably not eating properly for like the first even like couple years of just being a young kid, very stuck on the idea of being vegan, it still made such a heavy impact on all the health issues I currently had. So I was just so determined to figure out other ways of trying to make myself feel better. I had a lot of autoimmune issues, very low immunity in general. I was probably the only vegan on earth that ever got salmonella, which the FDA was a little confused by at the time. It was spinach, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just had no immune system. But the more I kind of like developed the idea, or like more I accumulated the education around veganism and actually started to like put the foundation down and build the blocks and eat in like a very well balanced way, the benefits health wise were like exponential. Like they everything became 180, and it helped me manage so many different symptoms of things that like I'd been told many times by specialists that like there's nothing I can do except for just manage the symptoms and just take it day by day. And it made such a huge difference that it was like one of those things where I just didn't picture myself ever going back. And
Yeah.
even having specialists say that they wish they had everyone eating the way that I was eating, because I should have been a lot worse if I had was eating a more traditional diet than if I was now. So that was enough to just like solidify it for me for ever.
And was that one of the things that led you to want to serve others in the health industry?
Yeah, I think that the health industry is very nuanced, and I think that there are many different levels to it. I can even just like go further into I can go on so many tangents when it comes to the health industry, and how there's a lot of unhealthy things in the health industry, and how there's things that are better serving than others. And I think that when it comes to taking care of yourself, it needs to come from a place that is like your health and like how you feel and how you put that out onto others. And it has to come from a very self-serving place. And I know that sounds selfish, but it does, because if you're able to kind of change your own philosophy to be like, I'm doing this because I want to be the best person I can be so that I can be that person for the other people in my life, then it puts you in a position where you're really doing things because they feel good to you. And that was something
Yeah.
that, you know, like when you are chronically ill your whole life, like taking that back and being like, I have other options. I don't just have to rely on other people to try to get me better. I can take that into my own hands. It's very empowering, and it also makes you want to kind of spread the gospel a little bit and kind of like
Yeah.
explain that like, yeah, like there are, like, you shouldn't be, and you don't have to be a victim in your own health. You can really put yourself in the driver's seat in a lot of ways and live the life that, you know, you deserve to live. So it definitely got me to a place where I was so obsessed and passionate about it, and I just like was obsessed with education and obsessed with learning and looking at all the different ways that, you know, changing yourself from like a literal molecular level from the inside out has like this massive impact. And it just continues to like duplicate and prosper in all aspects of your life. And it makes like just the biggest difference when you feel good on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel the as you call it the preacher stage
Yeah.
is when you go vegan. At the beginning, you do have that phase because then you're like, I want to save everyone.
Hmm.
And especially if you've dealt with health issues and you are able to heal that and get to a much better place, like damn, there's a lot of other people suffering. And you I think, if you're a good person, and I know that you are, and I think the majority of the world is, if they've dealt with issues and they have the ability to help other people dealing with the same issues, then yeah, it's just going to come pouring out of them.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. What came first, studying for nutrition or for personal training?
Well, I was pretty, so I also, when I was younger, I had a pretty bad eating disorder. And this is where it kind of got a little murky when people were like, oh, should you be going vegan? But the two of the things kind of spurred each other on, where I was so dead set on being vegan for animal reasons, animal cruelty at the beginning, before I even saw the way that it helped my health, that it became one of those things where I became very obsessed with this idea of like, you can nurture yourself and you can do it in a way that isn't restrictive, that isn't detrimental to kind of like your psyche at that point, because that was like a big concern. And that's kind of where the inspiration led into my love for nutrition, of like, this can be something that is so much more than just what your plate looks like. It can be something that, like, because food itself is, it's cultural. It's something that you use to bring people together. It's something you use to celebrate. You eat it when you're sad, you eat it when you're happy, you do all these things, right? It's such a big part of your life that there's more levels to it than just, building up the macros on your plate or eating things that you like or don't like. Like, there's a lot of food psychology behind it. And that's kind of like where I geek out, is the food psychology of understanding that, like, there is a place where the healthy building blocks of a meal meets up with that the mental satiation of just like understanding what food plays and the purpose that it plays in your life, and finding that really good balance between the two, where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, for that's a better term, where you can have all the health benefits and also realize that it doesn't have to be this kind of like centric part of your life. It can kind of play in the background, and that's always been something that's kind of like made me just want to keep learning more. I want to learn about food science. I want to learn about food psychology. And that just pushed me into the training element, because I grew up playing sports, and the two kind of just went hand in hand. And so the obsession with nutrition was in the background, and then I was training people in the forefront, and just kind of doing it in a way where I could see people bring that same kind of ideology to people's training, to their mobility, to their functionality, and say, like, it's the exact same philosophy as, like, you're doing, like, the food, what you eat and how you move is not the center of your life. You do it so that you can center other things in your life and have, like, happen easy. And it should be this well-oiled machine in the background, so that you can take all that energy and put it into the things that you love and that you're passionate about. And that's what I want to do for people, is I want to create that machine in the background, so it's off their mind and it's just working overtime, while they can actually put and pour into their cup of whatever actually brings them the most joy. So the two kind of spurred each other on, and it's just never got off. I never got off the train.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, because it is true. When people struggle with a relationship with food, relationship with self, or with their body, it becomes everything. They wake up in the morning and they are worried about the food that they're going to have for breakfast, or that whatever weird thing they're doing nowadays. Like, I'm not going to eat until tonight at 7 p.m. and I'm only going to have this small salad, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I got to make sure that I do my 2 hours of workout today. So they're very obsessive over it, where that little voice in the back of the head is like, you shouldn't eat this, you should eat this, you shouldn't do this, you should do this. And it just, some people spend decades
Yeah.
in that cycle of it taking over absolutely their entire life. And they do miss the point of, like, having a healthy and fit body is not to just look great in your clothes and at the beach. It's so that when you're, 70 and 80, you're able to go hiking, go on those trips, enjoy life,
Yeah.
make sure that you have mobility and strength, so you don't get injured.
Exactly. Do the things that matter, because all that other stuff, it matters now, but it doesn't actually matter. You think it matters. And that's what I always see with people that do come in with that kind of obsession, or the feel like if they don't stare at their goals 24/7, that they're not gonna be able to achieve them. If they look away for a second, then the goal will disappear. And it's like, that just isn't what happens. It isn't what happens. And at the end of the day, I always believe that how you think about food it's a reflection of how you think about a lot of things, right? And that obsession can sometimes just be pinned onto food or onto fitness, and really there's something else going on. And if we kind of work on our approach and our kind of find that neutral space again, because once again, I always believe in food neutrality, body neutrality, because sometimes we can't jump straight to just like loving our space, our body, the person we are, but we can definitely become neutral. And if we can figure out a way to become neutral, it's much easier to get from neutral to loving than it is from hate to love. So everything to do with neutrality, if we can get there, then you can realize that approaching everything with that kind of neutrality of like, this thing is going to benefit me and I want to put energy into it, but at the same time, like, time is needed, patience is needed, these things are needed, because anything you sprint to and get to too fast, it's not going to be worth it. And it's also probably going to dissipate faster. You're going to lose it faster because you took too many shortcuts to get there. So like, take your time and enjoy the time, enjoy the journey, because this is not to look good for summer. This is, like you said, this is for the next 20 years of quality of life. Like, that's what's important, you know, picking up your grandkids, like being the 90-year-old that still goes out, you know, to yoga or for even walks with friends around the park like my grandma does. Like, that's what life is about. So it's about kind of zooming out and losing the fixation to gain so much more perspective and really understand why you're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, I love what you shared in people. Sometimes they're obsessing over the workout and nutrition, and sometimes it's hiding something else. I think all of the time it's hiding something else. It's always a form of escapism for another thing that they're dealing with. And it's so much easier to feel like I feel like as humans like to have a sense of control. So it's so much easier to have control over your nutrition and your fitness versus potentially other areas of your life where you may not have control. And that's why when my late partner was going through cancer, I was training for Ironman.
Yeah.
I could control training. I can control nutrition, and it made me feel good.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people do that when they have other things that they should be spending more time on in their life. They should be exercising and eating healthy, but it shouldn't be the sole focus.
Yeah, exactly. And it's easy to become a coping mechanism. And that's why it's very important to have spaces and like-minded people out there that are taking it from that perspective and coming at it from that angle, because it's very easy in this industry to kind of wrap up obsession in a pretty bow and present it in this, like, you got to be determined, you got to have willpower and just be ready to, you know, push the mold and go outside the box and all these things. And that's very motivating, and it can be. Motivation can be fleeting, and at the end of the day, it can be a very slippery slope. So I mean, it can sell. That's the thing. It's sexy and it sells. But at the end of the day, you're selling this thing that's going to just leave people disappointed, because it's another distraction. It's another obsession. And then they're left with the problems that they had before. And I don't think that serves people.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. I tell the unsexy truth. It'll take you longer than you think. You got to mess up more often than you think, and you got to have a harder time than you think it's going to be. But if you just show up consistently, eventually you get there.
Yeah.
It's the unsexy truth of how I got there and how you got there. That's how everyone gets to their goal, right? There's those waves, you mess up, you do great for a while, and sometimes not so great. You get back on it, you improve, and over time you get there.
Exactly. And it's, like you said, it takes longer, but wouldn't you rather get to the point where you're at the end and you never have to think about this stuff again? You're no longer going up and down. You're no longer yo-yoing. You're no longer thinking of, oh, what is January going to be like next diet? Like, you're not thinking of that anymore, because that space is occupied with things that actually matter because you put in the work. And that's like, that for me is what I love to see. I love when clients will come to me and say, you know, like, I actually read a book that wasn't about how to lose weight or how to, you know, do something like that. And I'm like, that's incredible.
That's a big win for some people.
It is a huge win, because people don't even realize how easily that obsession can seep into other parts of their lives, where they're no longer they're sacrificing so much of their joy, focusing on this thing that they think is going to be like the ultimate beacon of happiness, but they're also sacrificing all this other happiness when they could be happy right now if they just shifted things and realized that like the journey is what will get you there and will keep you there. Like it's what I'm good at. I'll
Yeah.
get you there and I'll keep you there. But like you also have to realize that like there are different sacrifices you have to make, and one of those sacrifices is that quick fix mentality, or this idea of like, you know, having the bikini body in a month, because like I said, if it sells and it sounds good, it probably is not going to benefit you in the long run.
No. You made me think of the Jim Carrey quote. He said, I wish everyone could be rich and famous to realize that there's nothing to it. I wish that everyone could be super fit to realize that there's not much to it.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to have a six pack and a flat stomach. Like, hey, we've been there. And I was miserable every time I was there. I was so hungry. I had such low energy. Like it looks good on camera, but dang, does it not feel great once you're there?
Exactly.
I don't like it.
Exactly. And it's a whole kind of testament to selling the dream, especially when it comes to social media, of a lot of those pictures that you see of those very ripped, you know, like perfect looking people. They've taken those photos when they're super dehydrated and starving, and they've reused them over and over and over again to make it seem like that's what they look like all year long. And they don't, because it's not healthy, and your body will fight you back on it every single time. And there's a reason it does, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you just end up binging. I think I gained 50 pounds in 1 month after my first bodybuilding show.
Oh yeah. The bodybuilding is definitely one of those easy to rebound places where I've seen, because once again, it's mental as well, right? It's that food psychology of the psychology of restriction goes so much further than even just the ingredients that you're eating or the food that you're eating, right? It's that idea of like, you tell yourself you can't have something and it's all you're going to want to have. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you are constantly telling yourself that a food is bad, then that's the first thing you're going to turn to the minute your brain goes, boop, I can't do it anymore. And you're just going to go crazy on it. And then immediately start the cycle again when you say, okay, I ate all of it. I can never have it again. I'm going to start clean eating on Monday. And like, that's going to be it. And you cut out all this food again. But all you're doing is setting your brain up again to being like resource guarding, where it's like, we want that resource because you're putting it on this pedestal, and it just goes over and over and over again. And you're stuck.
Yeah. I think I found the trick, Cassidy. We're just going to tell people that fruits and veggies are bad for them and that they can't have them. And then they'll want them even more. And they won't be able to control themselves when they start eating it.
See,
I think that might be just reverse psychology.
You might be onto something, because I would love to find a massive case study where that actually is the case, where people are told, you know, that there's this new fruit that's like they can't absolutely have because the sugar in it is insane or something crazy. And I guarantee you that it would be the exact same thing, because I've seen it time and time again, especially when I ask people, what are your fear foods? Which is a big one I like to ask people, because people usually have a list. No two people's food fears are the same, which goes to show you that it's not so much the food as it is your connotations you put on that food and the fears that you've put on the food. So it really does come down to, like, you've developed this idea that a certain food is going to have a certain reality to it. And a lot of it is like, if I eat that food, I won't be able to stop eating that food. And there, once again, it comes down to the neutrality, the permissions you give yourself, and the restrictions you put on yourself. And we have to slowly chip away at those things to get back to that neutral space, because the minute you release it, that food doesn't matter to you anymore. The minute you realize that food it's just a food, right? If you're super scared of peanut butter because you think it's all fattening and all these things, the minute you release that idea that it's bad, you suddenly don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And it happens every time like clockwork.
I did that with a client way back in the day. It was popcorn for him. He's like, it's so bad for me, and like I can't control myself around it. And so in his meal plan, I built that he would have 10 cups of popcorn, like obviously unsalted and no butter, obviously, but just like popcorn, 10 cups a night every day. I was like, I want you to have it every day. And about a week and a half into it, he's like, hey man, like I don't want popcorn anymore. I'm like, great, don't have it.
Yeah.
And then he didn't eat it for like a week straight, and he wants some popcorn. He's like, I want some popcorn, like eat it. And he ate it once, and then after that for a whole month he didn't eat popcorn. I was like, if you just make that disconnection of like, it's not a special food, and you can have it every day if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's a game changer for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes just that idea of somebody else giving them permission kind of just
Yeah.
makes that restriction just like poof out of their head of like, I put that restriction there for so long, but this other person is saying I'm allowed. And now it's like, it's no longer important. It's once again, it's never the food. It's never the food, and it doesn't matter what the food is or whatever argument you have towards the food. It's never the food. It's always your impression and your restrictions you put around the food. And that's why it's like I say, it doesn't matter what the food is. I can get you completely neutral towards it. Doesn't matter. I don't care what
Yeah.
it is. So
And people think that it's logical for them to fear that food, right? Some people, I would say, bread and pasta is probably on a lot of people's list, but you have to get some people, bananas, berries would be on that list,
yeah.
vegetables would be on that list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so making people realize that they've created a set of rules that they've completely created. Society didn't create it, a book didn't create it. They just read a bunch of things and put it together. Like, these things are not good for me because I read them somewhere. I can't remember where, but I know that it's not good for me. And then just have this really bad relationship.
Mm-hmm.
What helped you improve your relationship with food in your own journey?
So for me, it was really kind of deconstructing all of my beliefs around what food is and the basically the purpose it has. And it was every single day challenging a belief. So it would always be, I would work my way through and I'd be like, I give myself permission to eat whatever. And I've come a really long time, like, or come really far in recovery. Cause for me, it did go from severe anorexia. And then the recovery was, oh, you're at I was in a outpatient center and they were like, well, now you're at a healthy enough weight. It's time for you to go out on your own. And there was really no tools to go from, I was never eating to now you just have to eat. So just like go figure it out. And I was just kind of like left to my own devices. And that immediately goes from restriction. What's the next obvious answer? Binging. So it became from anorexia to binge eating disorder. And it just became this like constant cycle of binging where I would do the exact same thing where I would say, like, I'm going to plan out everything meticulously. I'm going to eat exactly this. And then I would get, maybe 6 days into that and then be like, I can't do it anymore. And I would just binge like crazy. And it would just go back and forth, back and forth. And as I slowly started to work out of that honestly, it was a lot of reverse dieting and it was a lot of eating more slowly and slowly until I got to a place where my body was at least at a place where it was nourished. And then it was time to tackle my mind and the emotional side of food. And once I was able to kind of like look at it from that perspective, I was able to say, okay, why exactly do I believe this about food? What are the foods? I write them out. What are the foods that actually cause like a physical reaction, like of fear? And why do I have those things? And I would kind of just day by day break down each one of them. And the more I educated myself, the more I understood, metabolism, the more I understood your gut microbiome, all these things of like how your body breaks down food, all the lies in the billion-dollar food industry that they sell you when, if fat is a good thing this month because it's making the money, then suddenly eat all the fat. But if next month it's bad, then it's fat-free everything. And it just depends on how their business model is going. So as a consumer, it's very, very confusing to see all of that. And the only way to kind of combat it is with education and with understanding. And so it fueled that inspiration to like really dive deep into education when it came to nutrition. And then it was after I kind of understood that, it became kind of more of like, okay, now let's look at the emotional crutch of food and like why that comes into play. And then also kind of navigating like, is it always bad to emotionally eat? And the answer to that is also no, right? There is no kind of like dichotomy when it comes to food of like what's good versus what's bad. And you do have to constantly find yourself back in that neutral place of like, you're not going to be perfect. Things are going to be messy. Life is messy. Food is a thing that's constantly accessible. And it's not only accessible, it's pushed all the time because it is just such a center of our entire world, right? So you have to get to a place where you're looking at it from a physical, mental, and emotional standpoint and really kind of breaking down everything you thought you knew and replacing it with very neutral education from seeing it from different perspectives. And it took a long time. It was like a decade of work, but at the same time, it pays off so much because now I'm in a position where I don't have to say to a person, hey, if you have this issue with food, here's 10 years worth of education, you go figure it out. I can simplify that now very easily because I've developed all the shortcuts in that, journey through my own work and understanding that like there really is this idea of physical, mental, and emotional satiation, and all three have to be met if you want to find food neutrality. And that is something that I can easily, in a very tangible way, work on with clients that want to figure out, how to get rid of that fear food list or how to just stop thinking about food 24/7 because they've come from a dieting past. And so that's
Yeah.
something that I can really geek out with. And if anyone ever needs it, then my clients know that I've got them. So yeah,
Yeah, and you're gonna be. I was thinking that you're gonna be leading amazing group calls
I'm
for the
very
members
excited.
because that's the majority of the population.
Yeah,
Like the amount of people that don't worry about food is a very small percentage. The amount of
absolutely.
people that don't have a history with dieting is a very small percentage. Like shit, I've been in the fitness industry for over a decade, and I have a history with dieting
Yeah.
as well. Right? Everyone that's been in the fitness space has some type of history with it, and everyone that's still in it many years later was forced to do internal work
Hmm.
to fix it because you can't live with that unhealthy relationship with food for a decade plus,
No.
right? Especially if you work in that field because you're literally 24/7. It's fitness, nutrition, and fit vegan. You're
Yeah.
like living in that world. Yeah, and I think one thing also you mentioned earlier to kind of tie it into your journey of healing, which was to not focus on the goal the whole time, not to just stare at your goal with the fear that it's going to go away. It reminded me of when I always wanted to meet Tony Robbins.
Hmm.
And so I set that goal 16 years ago. And I just set it and it kind of set a direction for my life. And then I forgot about it. And then it happened last year and a half ago. I got to meet him in person and talk with him.
Wow.
And then I got there and I was like, oh shit. Like I did the thing. Like I reached a goal. Did it take a decade longer than I thought it would? Like,
Hmm.
yeah. Am I happy that I did, even though it was a decade longer? Absolutely. But I feel that's a mistake people make. They just stare at like, I want to improve my relationship with food. I have to worry about food. I have to worry about fitness.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's a disservice to be doing that the whole way through. Because I'm sure you were focused more on education, self-improvement versus I need to heal my relationship with food the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those a watch kettle never boils type of things where when you are focused, it's doing the exact opposite, right? It contradicts your goal of reaching your goal because they're also when it comes to the human body and not to be the West Coast woo woo, but I can't help it.
I
But
I've noticed a few of your answers. I can tell you from the West
I
Coast.
know. It's just I don't know what it is, the air or the water here. But
Yeah.
there is this, there's this stress response that's also tied to being so obsessed with something and so worried that it's not going to come to fruition. And that just puts you back, right? So if you're so obsessed with, losing 10 pounds, for example, your body is in constant fear and it has no idea why. But the whole point is that you want it to relax enough to lose 10 pounds. But we know just like biologically, like at the end of the day, like our bodies aren't wired to do anything well under stress. So you're putting it under stress while expecting it to, be in its prime. And it's like the two are just they're not gonna happen. So you do have to kind of like let go. And it can be the hardest thing, especially if you really struggle with control, which control and food issues kind of go hand in hand sometimes. If you do struggle with control, it can be really, really difficult to just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna put my hands up, take the back seat, and just like hope that we get to where we need to go. That doesn't mean do nothing. It means do the little things that add up to the big thing. But it means have faith that you're gonna get there. With the right guidance, you're gonna get there. And you just can't be just driving yourself crazy staring at it the whole time because that's just going to make it slower. And it's a catch 22. So you just kind of have to shut your eyes, go into kind of like background mode and let it happen. And it'll happen so much faster. The minute you let go, your body relaxes. It's like, once again, so woo woo, but we can bust out the case
It's
studies and I
true.
can show you all the actual science behind it, but it truly is real.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's not woo. It's not woo at all. And I just wrote an article about this today. It was I had a meeting with one of my Tony Robbins coach actually, and we're talking about becoming the newer version of you, going to the next level in your life, whatever that may look like.
Hmm.
And he said, the old you has to die for the new you to be born. So basically letting go of the old ego, old self, old belief system, old things that you had in order to move to that next step. Because if you're still holding on to it, you're going to stay the same. And so who you were brought you to where you are, but it won't bring you to where you want to be,
Hmm.
basically. And that's hard because that is a massive shift in identity, right? For a
Yeah.
lot of people, I've been the person that worries about food and thinks about fitness all the time. And potentially they've had a lot of positive reinforcement from their community and the people around them of like, hey, you're always so active and fit. You're always making healthy decisions. And it's hard to detach yourself because not just your identity you're changing, but the perception of other people about your identity and how you interact with the world
Yeah.
is going to change as you become a different, better version of yourself. But it still feels like a death of the old you for the new you to be born.
Yeah. Which is scary, but you
Yeah.
kind of nailed it. It is ego, and it's also recognizing that a lot of the work you have to do is challenging if what you believe is even your beliefs, or if it is the conditioning from how you were raised, from the dieting you watched your parents do, from the way you interact with your friends, or what you consume online. Like, all of those things have such an impact on what we think is good for us. And a lot of the times it's just not. There's a lot of deconditioning you have to do when it comes to what you think is right. And I think that's where the chronic dieters get stuck, because they are constantly approaching things with the exact same mindset of, I have to cut out things, I have to restrict myself, I have to diet down to nothing, I have to run 10 miles a day, I have to do all these things, right? And time again, they find themselves in the exact same place, thinking it's their fault, when really the formula is probably just broken. And a big
Yeah.
kind of coming to fresh air moment for a lot of people I see is recognizing that there is so much pressure put on a person to blame themselves, and that's how the industry kind of works, is like, I'm giving you the answer, and if you can't do it, it's your fault. But the answer they're giving you is setting you up to fail. That's how they work, because the minute you fail, you come back to them for another answer. And so that's just what they want to see keep happening. But if you challenge the actual formula and you rewrite the formula to include what you actually like, what you actually are capable of doing with that element of challenge, but like within the realm of like, I can see myself doing this for another 10, 20 years, and you rewrite it to fit you, suddenly the outcome is different, and it continues to be different. And then you never have to revisit those old broken formulas again. But we also take out the element of blaming yourself and making it I just don't have the willpower, I don't have the, determination to do it. That's never been the problem. If you're constantly dieting, you've got determination. Trust me, dieting
Yeah.
sucks. So you've got the willpower to, constantly put yourself through that. But it's a matter of like, you're just not putting yourself through the right things. And it's not your
Yeah.
fault.
It's something we tell every member before they start on the initial application call. We're trying to create self-sufficient people, not people that needs their hand held once they're done the program. And I say the whole point is when you're done, you're done. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Right. I say it's bad for business, but it's good for karma. And I care more about that part. When you were talking about those belief systems that people have, they're like, they have the broken formula ultimately.
Yeah.
It made me think of this quote that most people live their life by default and not by design. And so they kind of take on things that have been pushed on them through media, social media, books, or whatever. They kind of just get nudged in different directions and pick up habits and belief system as
Yeah.
they move along. And then they look up when they're a little bit older and they're like, I believe all of these things, but they never think to question them. And they're like, why does my life suck? Why am I overweight? Why am I unhealthy? Why am I miserable here? Well, I believe all of these things to be true. Says who, right? Like, where did you pick those up? I got a tattoo. It says create, and then there's no rules. That's what I wrote under it, because I caught myself at one point and I was like, I believed something for so long. And then I just sat there kind of like what you did as you were going through your healing journey. I was like, did I create that? Like, who the heck told me that? Like, why do I believe this? Like, who told me that? And I realized that I created it like several years ago. And I was like, that's such a stupid belief. I don't need to have that anymore. And then I was just like, I don't need it. And then it was like a whole new world opener. I was like, oh, I can actually do all of these amazing things. And so I love, and I hope people that are listening are catching on to your philosophy of transformation, because that's the reason I brought you on the team, because you're
Hmm.
very much aligned with how we do everything. So I want people to understand that, like, it's not actually about the nutrition. It's not actually about the strength training. Like, we can build that for them. That's great. That's not going to solve the problem, because, like you said, if we give the plan and you fail at it and you come back and we tell you to do the plan and we don't address anything else, we're not helping you,
Yeah.
right? We're just reinforcing a, like you mentioned, a broken formula. But doing the work of like, why? Why are we having a hard time with nutrition?
Hmm.
Why are we having a hard time with training? That's what coaching is. That's what people don't understand. They think it's about building the freaking plan. It's not about the plan. It's about why you're having a hard time sticking to the plan. That's
Yeah.
what coaching is.
Exactly. Yeah, and there is no magic one way to do everything. If there was one magic
Mm-mm.
formula that fit everyone, there would be no fitness industry. It would just be taught in one textbook and it would be done and it would never be a thing. But it's not. Like coaching is so individualized and it really does come down to meeting the person where they're at, but also addressing every single why. When I ask somebody just any kind of history, my first immediate impulse, and it's like a trigger at this point, is just to go, why? Like, why is that? Why do you think? Anytime I meet with somebody, it's, I want to know what got you here. Because every single choice you made, I want to know, was it because you did it for you or because you did it for somebody else? You did it because you thought you had to do it, which is a big one. You know, like people that are not runners that hate running, but they decide that running is the best way to change their body because they saw it, you know, on Instagram, or their sister's a runner and it works great for her. Like, there's no one way to do anything, and the quickest way to stop something is to hate it. So we need to figure out, you know, to add in the joy into the formula and recognize that, like, there's so much more out there. And the reason why I think the word health is so nuanced and it's such a broad word is because healthy looks different on everyone. And for some
Yeah.
people, healthy is going to be, you know, training for marathons and running all the time. Another person is going to be doing yoga, doing mobility, doing anything, you know, that fits with their body, fits with their biomechanics, whatever it may be. But it's going to look different on every single person. And you can't try to make somebody else's version fit you if it's not your shoe size. It's not going to fit. So you can't.
Yeah. And I think people's definition of health and fitness is also defined by their previous history, like their
Yeah.
past and what they've lived, right? Like if you've been super sick your whole life and you've been having a hard time just like exercising or walking, you being able to run a 5K, like you're in the most phenomenal shape that you've ever been in your entire life, right? You don't even
Exactly.
have to go and run a marathon. You just did a 5K.
Yeah.
And so I think that definition is very dependent. If you have a history of doing Ironman, like, okay, maybe for you, if you do 5 in a row, right? Whatever may be like the whatever ritual is, the big five, the 5 Ironmans in a row. Everyone has their own thing. But personally, I think that at that level of competing, there's some shit that's not being dealt with in the head.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, because I was there. I know what I was dealing with. It
Yeah.
was not because I wanted to be fit and healthy. I needed to numb myself and feel in control. That's why I was doing it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and so when it comes to training,
Yeah.
personal training, just for people to know, because obviously you are certified and you have your years of experience in that, but you can give a little like overview of your experience with that, so people can know a little bit about it.
Yeah, so when it comes to training, very similar philosophy. I do believe that we are looking at the long term as much as we can. I want to look at, once again, history. If you say you injured your shoulder 10 years ago, but it hasn't been a problem, you know, usually also when you say it hasn't been a problem, it has been a problem. It just hasn't been a consistent problem, which is another thing I like to dive in on. Your body is it's basically an entire history of you, right? You've lived your life in this body. There's going to be little bumps and hiccups along the way, and your body will keep the score and it will kind of write everything down as you move along. And that stuff can, you know, cause issues down the line. So if we look at it, I want to know everything that's happened. I want to know the ground zero of it because we're building a new foundation and we want to make sure it's on a solid one and it's not going to cave in later because we're looking at long term. And I like functionality, I like mobility, I like flexibility, I like all the things that are going to keep your body feeling good because you can train really hard and get some nice aesthetics out of it, but that doesn't mean you're not doing it at the expense of kind of your body's health, and we want to make sure that we're looking at longevity above all else. So when I am designing a program or when I'm training, it's very much with mobility in mind. It's very much with proper kind of biomechanics going on, and also with a lot of core and posture involvement. I'm really big on core, pelvic floor as well, both men and women. I, would love if nobody peed their pants when they're 80 or 90. I'm a big fan of just working all things kind of deep, muscular, just foundations, and making sure that we're focusing on the movements that are going to have you, like I said, doing the things you like to do. If it's a sport specific thing, sure, we can design it that way. But if it's, I just want to live my best life, then we're looking at holistic, and we're looking at kind of hitting everything evenly and making sure that we're doing it from a place where you're not going to ever cause any imbalances or compensations moving down the line. So keeping it nice and even. That's what I like.
Yeah. I'm excited for people to work with you. I'm very excited to have you on the team, and I hope the people listening are as well. If you guys get to work with Cassidy, you guys are in great hands. You're gonna have an awesome transformation. Because when we bring in coaches, we always think of the philosophy has to be the first thing. Obviously, you have your certifications, your experience, you have all that, but there's a lot of certified coaches and nutritionists that have a terrible transformation philosophy, right? That are just like, hey, just cut the food in half, work out super hard for an hour. You can't do it, it's your fault. Just do it.
Yeah. That's
basically the only piece of advice. Like, let's not address why you're struggling with it. Let's just do it. And so I'm very excited for people to work with you. Anything that you would like to share to the people listening that will be working with you?
I would probably say, like I said, neutrality and kind of joy are kind of the two words that I throw around a lot because it's what I care most about when I'm working with somebody. I think that if you are somebody that says, like, eating, in a way that feels good or moving in a way that feels good just like has never been my personality. It's never been who I am. I say that you probably have just been doing all the wrong things that you don't actually like, right? You've been trying to make a shoe fit that doesn't fit. So I'm really good at taking you to the shoe store and finding something that actually does look and feel good. And you'd be really pleasantly surprised to see that we can build you something that makes you feel like you've unlocked a whole new part of your personality where you're actually excited to do these things. And I'm all about deconstructing and eliminating all kind of diet culture beliefs. And I believe that the only unhealthy food for you is the one that you have built up a fear against, because that mental kind of unhealthy nature is what I like to eliminate when it comes to food, and getting people back to that neutral space where you gravitate towards like the foods that make you feel good because there is no fear, there is no heading to an event and being scared of what's going to be on the table. You feel good, you exude, positive and just like good vibes, because from the inside out, you just are the best version of yourself based on all of the mental work that I'm going to have you do, but it's going to be fun. I like a good mental challenge, and I can be a mental challenge, but in the best way. So if you're ready to ditch all of the diet culture and the yo-yo dieting and all of the stuff that's made you feel small and like you can't accomplish it, leave that at the door and let me take you from there, because you'll be in good hands.
Beautiful. Right. And that's all we do, to be honest with you. We tell people all the time, mindset is 80% of our work. The rest is training and nutrition. Well, beautiful. So Cassidy, super happy to have you on the team. Excited that we get to record this episode. For the people listening, if you're interested in working with Coach Cassidy, there's a link down below where you can book your application call, and we'll have a conversation with you to ultimately see, what needs to happen for your transformation. Everyone has to go through that step before they work with us, because we guarantee every single one of our transformations. And in order to do that, we need to have a full picture of where you're at so we can build you an accurate game plan, right? So just a layer of protection for you and of safety for everyone to be like, hey, it's going to take you this long. Are you okay with it? Here's what needs to happen. And then we can get you started. So everyone, go down below, book your call. Cassidy, excited for you to coach some of our members.
I'm so excited. I'm very excited to be here, and very excited to be surrounded by like-minded people that just are going to challenge and push me too, which is anything you can even ask for. So
beautiful. Well, everyone, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.